Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Horror Mine. My name is Vic Shy, and this is the Scare Score, where I break down horror movies and rate them on how scary I think they are. In this episode, I'll be going over the 2005 South Korean horror film, The WIG. I'll be going over the events that take place throughout the film while breaking down each scare scene and rating them on how scary they are or attempt to be. The WIG also has an alternate title of Scary Hair, but how scary is it? Sit back and relax and join me as we explore The WIG and tally up the Scare Score. Our movie begins with a first-person view of a car driving down a dark and dimly lit road. A news broadcast over the radio details a fatal car crash, a student who deleted themselves, and a young girl found dead covered in hair, all events that will be shown later in the film. Someone driving his car a little too fast spins out after a weird shadow rudely flies into his windshield. The man briefly contemplates his speeding choices before getting out of the vehicle. Something dark slowly approaches him from the shadows before the screen fades to black. This is a pretty generic scene that doesn't offer much in terms of scares. The events mentioned on the radio are important, but the placement of this scene feels odd and didn't need to be in the intro for the film. The following scene is very eerie and should have just served as the opening for the film. We see long black hair majestically flowing around in the water. Someone is using a sewing machine to make a wig and their finger gets caught. Blood drips down onto the wig as we hear someone crying in agony. Hair grows out of the blood and creepily forms into the movie's title. This scene does a good job in being unsettling. The sudden cuts from the hair quietly flowing in water to the aggressiveness of the sewing machine helped give off the unsettling feeling. The finger getting caught in the machine was a nice touch, and the crying in the background was not only creepy but helps create intrigue for the story. Overall strong intro that would have been even better without the prior scene. We meet our main character Soo-hyun looking at a beautiful water scenery from the hospital window. A man walks into her room to take her belongings and breaks down crying. I'm not exactly sure who this man is, and he doesn't show up for the rest of the film. This is a little peek of the flawed storytelling the film unfortunately suffers from. Soo-hyun suffers from terminal cancer and has lost all her hair. We are introduced to her sister Ji-hyun, who buys her a wig. Ji-hyun has a seemingly one-sided conversation with the doctor as she can no longer speak due to an accident. The doctor tries talking her out of lying to her sister about her condition. She wants to tell Soo-hyun that she's been cured of her cancer so she can enjoy the time she has left. As Soo-hyun sits alone in her room, the wig slithers its way underneath her bed. Ji-hyun walks in and hands her the wig, which was neatly wrapped inside of a box. On the ride home, Ji-hyun proceeds with her plan to tell her sister that she's been cured, although the look on her face shows that she's not convinced. We are introduced to our next character, a man named Ki-sok, who is in my opinion the worst character in the film. He is Ji-hyun's ex-boyfriend and doesn't really serve much of a purpose until later, and even that's questionable. Soo-hyun sits in a bathtub and looks completely drained by her condition. It's pretty heart-wrenching to see, and I would give it a 5 points on the sad score. Ji-hyun walks into her bedroom and sees the wig on the ground. She hangs the wig over a robe, which gives off the creepy illusion that it's an actual person. We then get a fake-out jump scare courtesy of Soo-hyun, who just got out of the tub. Look, we all know from the movie's title that there is definitely something wrong with that wig. However, the scare factor in this scene comes from the mere implication that the wig is alive. It's cliche, but it works. Sometime later, Soo-hyun walks into her room and finds the equivalent of me after one too many shots of sake, her wig on the ground. She places the wig on her head just in time for an ominous generic noise that makes her turn around. She looks back into the mirror and instantly looks healthier, almost as if she were a different person. The slight smile she cracks is brief but very eerie. Ki-sok has dinner with the sisters, which turns awkward very quickly. He and Ji-hyun have already been broken up but want to pretend to be happy together until Soo-hyun passes. It's all very depressing stuff that I feel isn't nearly explored enough to carry any real emotional weight. We meet one of Ji-hyun's friends for about 10 seconds and don't even get her name. There is another shot of Soo-hyun creepily smiling into her mirror, which shows that there is definitely something wrong with her. She walks into her sister's work workroom who is a stained glass artist. She reminisces about a time they had with their father taking pictures at an amusement park. They decide to go out and take pictures with that very same camera. They take pictures on a bridge, which had me thinking that somebody was gonna get it. Thankfully, that doesn't happen. They ask a schoolgirl to take their photo and she notices something strange about Soo-hyun's hair. I get what they were going for in this scene, but it doesn't really work for me. I initially thought that the wind was just blowing so hard it had her hair flailing more than one of those tube man things in front of those car dealerships.
Waving inflatable arm flailing tube man! Wacky waving inflatable arm flailing tube man!
On the way home, Soo-hyun says that she didn't believe she was cured. However, she now feels full of energy, almost as if she'd never been sick. She gets spooked by a bus oddly going backwards, but what she sees next terrifies her. We see what I believe to be the 3 schoolgirls they met on the bridge sitting in the back of the bus. Suddenly, one of the schoolgirls appears dead with hair growing out of her mouth and covering her body. The scene plays out as an aggressive jump scare with disturbing imagery. The creepiest thing about this scene is seeing the 3 girls sitting so still in the back of the bus. There is a pretty cool visual of Ji-hyun pouring a glass of water while Soo-hyun sits on the bed. Her position appears to shift in the water, possibly showing that she isn't herself. She is given medicine but only pretends to take them and hides them under the bed while her sister leaves. As the camera pans into the hallway, we see a shadow at the end of the hall. Ki-seok is hard at work sculpting and ignores a phone call from Ji-hyun. She looks at her artwork on the wall and we get a flashback of her sculpting it. The piece is revealed at an art gallery that Ki-seok fails to show up to. On the way home, she argues with him on the phone about him not showing up. A driver with a truck full of rebar gets jump scared and causes Ji-hyun to slam into the back of his truck. The rebar crashes into her windshield and stops just inches away from her throat. The car behind her then plows right into her car, causing the rebar to pierce her throat. This was the incident that caused her to lose her voice. As a crowd of onlookers gathers, the spirit that caused the crash eerily smiles at her in the corner. Again, really depressing stuff here. It seems like the sisters just can't seem to catch a break. As Ji-hyun lies on the couch crying about her misfortunes, Soo-hyun decides it's the perfect time to scare her by slowly placing her hair on her face. While Ji-hyun works on her next piece, Soo-hyun goes out to take photos of herself. She goes out to the amusement park from her childhood and remembers the happy times she had with her family. She then visits her parents' remains and says that she only wants to leave good memories of herself. As she takes a train ride home, her reflection eerily turns to look at her. That scene would have been more effective if we all didn't see it coming from a mile away. Ji-hyun walks into her sister's room, which has been painted all white and now seems a lot brighter. Remember Ji-hyun's friend from earlier that we saw for about 10 seconds? Neither do I, but apparently her husband cheated on her and now wants a divorce. The friend sees Soo-hyun's wig and gets the brilliant idea that wearing said wig is going to help her win her husband back. Amazing subplot to an already super engaging storyline. She puts on the wig to woo her cheating husband and we see an instant change in appearance in Soo-hyun. She looks much sicklier and blood begins dripping from her nose. She falls to the ground in pain and Ji-hyun struggles into the room to help her. She starts crying out for her wig in a scene that is pretty difficult to watch. That night, Ji-hyun hears a strange noise coming from the attic. She slowly makes her way up there and finds Soo-hyun in the dark with her back turned. She looks over her sister's shoulder for a very nice scare. This scare scene was very well done. The atmosphere and lighting were great. The face that popped up was nightmare fuel, which is appropriate because this was a nightmare. I don't typically like nightmare scenes in horror films because I think they're cheap, but this was very well done and didn't detract from the overall scare. She was woken up by a loud noise disturbance coming from her own house. She finds Soo-hyun dancing in the kitchen who played the loud music to wake her sister up on purpose. We finally learn the name of the friend who borrowed the wig, Kyung-ju, who kindly left the wig at their front door at the crack of dawn. Ji-hyun gets called into the police station and learns that Kyung-ju and her cheating husband are now dead. They show her gruesome pictures of the scene and believe that the couple deleted themselves, but don't question the large amount of black hair coming from their bodies. It was a bold choice by the director not to show any of the deaths by the wig happening. Most of the deaths are implied after the fact, which sort of hurts the film in my opinion. The concept of a possessed evil wig is weirdly awesome and they could have done a lot more with it. The tension between the two sisters rises when Ji-hyun catches catches her sister at the club dancing with Ki-seok. I guess the wig also provides enhanced sexy dancing abilities. In yet another sad scene in a film full of them, Ji-hyun looks at herself in the mirror and tries to talk, but can't. She also hears a faint, creepy laughter. This brief scare scene was executed in a pretty clever way. We don't really notice anything is there until Ji-hyun slowly turns off the faucet and pauses. The camera doesn't zoom in on her face or the wig, which I commend them for doing. What comes out of the stall is arguably scarier than any ghost or demon. It's her own sister making fun of her for not being able to talk. Ji-hyun storms out of the bathroom and hears the same creepy laughter in the hallway. While dolling herself up in the mirror, something in the reflection spooks her and she drops it. She reaches underneath the stall and is treated to a horrifying sight. The toilet seat rises on its own, revealing an eye. Hair emerges from the toilet as she sees the dead bodies of Kyung-joo and her husband. The imagery on display is pretty disturbing, and it's the first time we feel our characters may be in danger because of this wig. After Ji-hyun tucks her in and leaves the room, Soo-hyun slowly sits up and begins brushing her hair in front of the mirror. It's scenes like this where we see the wig slowly starting to take a hold of Soo-hyun that the movie is at its scariest. The doctor states that Soo-hyun's condition has drastically improved. This is where the drama between the two sisters really ramps up. Ji-hyun still has strong feelings for Ki-seok, but he's clearly checked out. One great thing about this film is its music. The music goes way harder than it should for a mediocre horror film. It's now Soo-hyun's turn to visit Ki-seok and drool all over him. He gives Ji-hyun a courtesy call letting her know that Soo-hyun is at his place. Soo-hyun gets comfortable and tries forcing herself on him. She weirdly keeps calling him teacher, which has something to do with the film's twist. He rejects her multiple advances until Ji-hyun arrives to drive her home. Ji-hyun finally realizes that the wig is cursed when she walks in on Soo-hyun brushing the spirit's hair. As her sister cowers in fear in the hallway, Soo-hyun casually walks past, showing that she isn't aware of what's happening. It's a nice little reveal, but sort of abrupt with 30 minutes left into the film. It's like she didn't even have a clue her sister was possessed until this very moment. It makes everything that happened up to this point feel like random, inconsequential occurrences. She busts into the room, snatches the wig off her sister's head, and the two get into a little tussle. She locks herself in her room and writes to Soo-hyun that they should destroy the wig because it's cursed. She then cuts into the wig with scissors as Soo-hyun bangs on the door and begs her not to. Soo-hyun falls to the ground foaming at the mouth and is rushed to the hospital. The doctor says that Soo-hyun is aging rapidly, the same thing that happened to Kyung-joo before she died. She now refuses to speak to Ji-hyun and asks Ki-seok to develop the pictures on her camera. In the hospital, she takes all of her medication except the red and white pills that she wasn't taking at home either. In a highly disturbing scene, Soo-hyun begins violently scratching her head as blood and pills fall out. This is a gruesome body horror scene that got right under my skin. The doctors and nurses rush into the room but only find an empty, bloody bed. Ki-seok and the police go searching for her while Ji-hyun goes looking for the origin of the curse. With less than 30 minutes left in the film, we get the origin of the curse in the form of an exposition dump. She visits the store where she bought the wig and the owner tells her that the wig was made in a factory rumored to use the hair of dead people. This specific wig was made from the hair of someone who took their passing into their own hands. The owner of the factory died while making the wig and nobody knows what happened to his daughter. This is all explained by a voiceover in about 30 seconds while we see Ji-hyun driving with a determined look on her face. At the hospital, Ki-seok looks at the developed photos from Soo-hyun's camera and the reason for his shocked reaction is revealed later. This 30-second scene of Ji-hyun driving her car through a small town is an excellent use of this film's runtime. She finds the abandoned wig factory and makes her way through the building looking for clues. The atmosphere inside the factory is super creepy. Long black hair is hanging everywhere as well as several mannequin heads. Ji-hyun doesn't notice somebody standing behind her until the mysterious girl runs off to hide in a locker. We get a fake jump scare courtesy of a small cat, and the young girl runs out behind it. The girl turns out to be the missing daughter of the factory owner, and we see a flashback of the WIG's creation. The film chooses to reveal this in such a messy and confusing way. We get just a fraction of what happened here and there, and when we finally do learn everything, it just doesn't feel satisfying or earned. So, to make a confusing and needlessly long reveal short, here's what happened. A young art student named Hee-ju fell in love with Ki-seok, who was his teacher. Hee-ju was bullied by the other boys in the class, but Ki-seok showed him kindness and the two formed a relationship. The wig maker's daughter had feelings for Hee-ju and was upset by their relationship. The bullies eventually beat Hee-ju and cut off his hair. They gave the hair to the wig maker's daughter, which hints that she was the one who told him to beat him. Sometime after that incident, Ki-seok distanced himself from Hee-ju and got engaged to Ji-hyun. Hee-ju, heartbroken, jumped from a very high place to total deletion. Hee-ju's spirit has been possessing the wig and Soo-hyun, which is why she has been calling Ki-seok teacher. Her face has also slowly been changing and now resembles that of Hee-ju. The possessed wig killed the wig maker, and his daughter has been hiding out inside of the factory ever since. Hee-ju has been trying to make his way back into Ki-seok's heart. He was the one who caused the crash that made Ji-hyun lose her voice. While he didn't finish her off as planned, he did manage to drive a wedge between the couple. His ultimate plan has been to possess Soo-hyun, slowly change her into him, and live happily ever after with Ki-seok. And he would have gotten away with it too if it hadn't been for the meddling Ji-hyun, who was caring for her terminally ill sister. Like I said, I feel like this reveal was very rushed and choppy. I totally got what they were going for, but there was definitely a better way to pull that off. It was given to us in the form of an exposition dump flashback and doesn't feel earned for what it was trying to accomplish. Ki-seok returns to his studio where he is confronted by the possessed Soo-hyun. Hee-ju reveals himself and again tries forcing himself on him. Ji-hyun tries to get inside, but the metal door slams itself shut multiple times. She manages to get it open and stands right between the doors for a solid 5 seconds before walking in. She was pretty much asking to get killed right here. The two sisters get into a fight and Ki-seok gets violently thrown over the rail trying to stop them. Hee-ju throws her down the stairs and Soo-hyun calls out to her sister from within. Hee-ju doesn't really seem intimidating here. He's doing a lot of one-handed choking while talking, but not really a lot of damage. Ki-seok tackles him to the ground and Ji-hyun manages to snatch the wig off. Ki-seok holds her down and Soo-hyun begins crying for her hair. The cursed hair begins to expand and Ji-hyun takes what seems like forever to douse it in gasoline and light the hair on fire. As Hee-ju's hair burns, so does his spirit and his memories with Ki-seok. Ji-hyun embraces the injured Ki-seok as the hair completely burns and Hee-ju's spirit seemingly moves on. Soo-hyun returns to normal but unfortunately returns to being very sick. She says that her hair keeps growing, which scares her sister into locking her inside of a closet. Ji-hyun believes that Soo-hyun is still possessed despite saying she's scared and needs her medicine. Soo-hyun tells her about a time they fought over balloons at the amusement park, something only they would know about. This convinces Ji-hyun to open the door, but when she does, she sees her sister in Hee-ju's image. She begins bashing her over the head with her father's camera and tragically kills her own sister. She's absolutely vicious about it too. I feel downright terrible for Soo-hyun. She was by far the film's most sympathetic character from the moment we were introduced to her. She just couldn't catch a break even until the very end. Her sister was okay, I guess. She just didn't really have many redeeming qualities about her, and I couldn't find myself rooting for her at all throughout the film, and especially after what she's just done. At the very least, a happy ending for Soo-hyun would have been nice, but that hardly ever happens in a South Korean film. After the deed is done, the doctor chooses the perfect time to call and say that Soo-hyun was not taking her pills. This temporarily caused her to look healthier and for her hair to grow back. Ji-hyun realizes what she's done and, in the film's final scene, embraces her dead sister as she completely breaks down in tears as the movie ends. And that, ladies and gentlemen, was The Wig. I think my heart shrunk 3 sizes from watching and covering this film. It's absolutely depressing from start to finish, and I don't think there was a single lighthearted moment or any sort of relief. Not that I was looking for that in a horror film, but that would have been appreciated considering that the film doesn't have much more to offer. This film was a big mess. The story was choppy, the film was painfully slow, and nothing really eventful happens until the last act. When the big reveal finally comes, it feels rushed and doesn't have any payoff. The biggest sin the film commits is that it's just not scary. Although I will give credit where it's due, the music was absolutely beautiful. It elevated very average scenes and conveyed feelings and emotions a lot better than the script managed to do, especially during these scenes involving the sisters. Now that I'm thinking back on it, these two scenes sort of mirror each other, and now I'm even more sad. Overall, the film felt like a mediocre drama with horror elements barely sprinkled throughout, earning the WIG a weak scare score of 35%. The scariest scene in the film was the head-scratching hospital scene, and trust me, I didn't have much to choose from. The scene definitely caught me off guard with the skin-crawling gore and will definitely be the scene I am reminded of when thinking about this film. But, as always, I hope you all enjoyed the video. Thank you all for tuning in, and I cannot wait to see y'all right back here in the horror mine. Y'all stick around.